Welcome again, everyone. My name is Oscar Ramirez. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DigiOle. And today we want to bring what is cooked behind the walls of the organization that has the mandate to coordinate the startup ecosystem. But before giving the floor to our guest speakers, let me bring some context for the topic today. So, a key aspect for developing startup ecosystems compared to, I would say, governmental or private organizations is the underlying logic that ecosystems are not considered owned or controlled in the traditional sense. We can agree that startup ecosystems are, I would say, understood as organic multi-stakeholder structures, including private and public organizations formed by people or startups in their different stages and basically interacting as a system to create and scale new innovations and growing companies. So these organizations can be further divided into segments and categories such as universities or funding organizations, support organizations like incubators, accelerators, co-working spaces, etc. Research organizations, service provider organizations like those providing legal services, etc. Large corporations, as well as local or state or national governments, including government organizations such as commerce or industry and trade departments that also play an important role in these ecosystems. These different organizations typically focus on specific parts of the startup ecosystem function and also in different parts of the startup journey. And with this picture in mind, and even considering that no one owns or controls the startup ecosystem, it doesn't mean that the startup ecosystem could not be developed or that their efficiency could not be significantly improved. And basically, in order to develop and improve the startup ecosystem, basically first you need to understand it. You need to somehow conceptualize it. And the best way to conceptualize complex things is basically by creating good processes that explain how things are interconnected and how they interact basically with each other to eventually have and bring a holistic understanding. So without that understanding, we would simply have random developments as a result. So this is our contribution to the startup ecosystem development, let's say, field or industry. So we basically are bringing a holistic way to understand the startup ecosystem development concept, starting with a clear understanding about the startup journey, but also basically bringing more understanding about how the entrepreneurs and the startups interact with other segments like the support organizations, the ecosystem builders, etc. So this is the framework. This is the theoretical, I would say, model. But we all know that how things also work in practice. And the thing is that each ecosystem actor is driven by their own agenda. And basically, in order to catch up with all the interactions and bringing more clarity and coordination, we have seen and we have validated globally that there's no one coordinating, moderating, and orchestrating the startup ecosystem to bring more efficiency. Therefore, it is key to basically to establish what we call the startup ecosystem operator, an ecosystem key function to basically to connect the bottom-up initiatives with top-down long-term thinking and sustainable resources to maintain I would say, ability to execute in short, medium, and long term, but also to facilitate, I would say, progress dialogue, to also to facilitate digital competence and serve various startup ecosystem functions equally, becoming neutral and also with proper resourcing, long-term and data-driven development perspective, with a strong mandate from all the ecosystem actors, with only one key mission: to focus on progress as a startup ecosystem. So this is one more contribution to the startup ecosystem that we are doing from Startup Commons, and this is what we want to bring, I would say, today. The startup ecosystem operator's journey told from the real and practical perspective of SDEC, the Sarawak Digital Economy Corporation, initiating the startup ecosystem operator function in Sarawak, Malaysia. So it's my pleasure to bring to the stage today both Elizabeth Linli and Khairool Adzlelan, representing SDEC today. Elizabeth, Khairool, great to have you two here today with us. How is everything there in Sarawak?
Hi, Oscar. Everything is good in Sarawak. A little bit busy as usual. Weather has been good. Yeah, busy the good kind.
All right. Hi, Elizabeth. How are you?
Hello, hello. Good. Doing well. Staying negative.
All right. So before starting, because you are seeing the, we have put the titles from both Elizabeth and Khairool. But I think as a first step, maybe both of you, Elizabeth and Khairool, can introduce a little bit about yourself and basically tell the audience what's your basically were your responsibilities at the SDEC. Elizabeth,
sure.
please, or Khairool, feel free, please.
Yeah, no problem. So hi, my name is Khairool. I am currently the manager of ecosystem development and digital innovation under the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Department of Sarawak Digital Economy Corporation, or SDEC. So that's a bit of a mouthful, but find my LinkedIn, it's the same name. There's a bit of a spelling error there, but that's fine. So I have been working with SDEC for the past couple of years. Before that, we were with the Sarawak Multimedia Authority. And then basically from, I think, somewhere around 2018, 2019, when the state itself, when our beloved Premier announced that the digital economy is going to be the front runner of economic development in Sarawak, and therefore in the International Digital Economy Conference, IDEX 2017, a lot of the groundworks has started. Basically, all the gears have moved. And then me joining in part of that movement, I think it's very nice to contribute some of my attention, some of my energy, and make the connections to make sure things are happening to spark our economic development through innovation and digital entrepreneurship. Elizabeth, over to you.
Hello. Wow, very nice introduction there, Khairool. So hi, everybody. I'm Elizabeth. You may also call me Ellie for short. I am the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Executive, and I've been with SDEC for about a year plus. I joined last year in May 2021. Yeah, so I'm not a stranger to the whole ecosystem, because previously I was doing my internship with Magic Sarawak. I would put the link later in the chat for everybody's reference as to what that is. But yeah, no stranger at all. I've known Khairool for the past 5 years already, so we are like, yeah, no strangers to each other.
All right, thanks both. So let's try to have like today like a very basic conversation, just to bring more understanding and clarity about how was your journey initiating that function in Sarawak. And we will try to basically to take our participants through the SDEC timeline to help them understand that journey. Is it okay for you? All right.
Yeah, sounds great. Sounds great.
Sounds great. Okay, let's try to make that trip together today, and let's start from the beginning, right? So I remember that our first interaction with it was not with SDEC, it was with SME, right? Was basically around 2018. I think that someone from Sarawak came here, and basically by that moment we got to know a kind of a booklet about Sarawak Digital Economy Strategy 2018-2022, right? So was it truly the moment when everything started, Khairool, Elizabeth?
Sorry, come again, Oscar?
Yeah, was that moment in 2018 when really the Sarawak government started to look seriously at how to basically to create more innovations, how to create more entrepreneurship with a clear strategy in place?
Oh yeah. So innovation and digital entrepreneurship, I think, from the state of Sarawak's perspective, is one part of the. I think it was an enabler under the whole digital economy strategy. That is a bit of a 5 years plan since 2018 up until this year, 2022. So innovation and entrepreneurship is one part of that, one element of that blueprint itself. It was actually quite clear because under the blueprint itself, it basically mentions what are the key action items, what are the strategies, what are the objectives under each of the economic sectors and enablers that was presented in the book. And then this was really announced during the, hang on, let me remember. The Digital Economic Conference, International Digital Economy Conference 2017, IDEX. And then you can actually look it up. It's just simply titled Sarawak Digital Economy Strategy. And then you can look it up, some of the key elements there. Even ourselves, when we joined the team, it basically creates that pathway, that runway for us to start developing the ecosystem. Of course, back then, it wasn't really clear that it was indeed an ecosystem. It was when we started going out beyond the borders of Sarawak, going to Estonia, Startup Estonia, going to Finland through Slush, some places in Jakarta to Techstar in Jakarta. There's also Techstar in Bangkok that we went, that we realized that, look, we're not alone in the journey, right? Even though our premier has basically paved the way, but then we really can't do it alone. And therefore, I think that's where the ecosystem mindset sort of comes in and starts to, plant its seed there.
And how did it came that? So basically, so I'm wondering if that was something like, basically, of course, at the end of the day, we are exposed to a lot of media and related news. I'm also curious about if there was any kind of demand coming from the support organizations, even from the entrepreneurs, the startups, to basically to have in Sarawak like a more structured way to basically where they can get to know where they have to go in order to receive specific support for the different phases of their journey.
Got it. Well, speaking of demand, I think this is where a lot of our grassroots partners, our community partners comes into play as well. When we started back then and started to get to know the people who has been doing this, in fact, without even realizing that now that the Premier has actually announced the digital economy strategy, that the Premier is looking at innovation as one of the elements in digital economy strategy, right? They've actually been helping the entrepreneurs through a lot of promotions, a lot of digital marketing, and then looking at startups, not necessarily as startups, but looking at them as businesses, looking at them as problem solvers for the communities that can be looked into that can be sustained through some sort of a business model. So there is a little bit of a movement on the grassroots level, and then that sort of creates the demand. So when we started to reach out to borders beyond Kuching, beyond our own cities, and then within Sarawak itself, we started to realize that a lot of the things are already happening at, smaller scales and smaller cities, smaller towns, Sarawak, different places in West Malaysia as well, in Sabah as well. So there's a lot of things that's happening. And then, yeah, so in terms of the demand, it's definitely there. It's just less coordinated back then. And a lot of them are very, very localized, I would say.
Yes. And then we move forward to basically to 2019. It was basically the moment where our collaboration started. We made like an amazing trip to Sarawak, and basically we're doing an ecosystem tour at least in 3 cities: Kuching, Cebu, and Miri. What was your main motivation basically to bring us there, and what was the biggest discovery or learning that you got in that first experience with us?
I think the main motivation was trying to figure out, are we not alone in this journey, sort of, because if you look at the landscape of Sarawak itself, I think for those who are unfamiliar, Sarawak is one of the biggest state in Malaysia. We are also less dense in terms of our population. A lot of the major cities populations around the major cities would range somewhere in the 200,000 to about 500,000 people. So it's not really that dense per se. And some of the places are also quite remote. And then when we realized that a lot of the opportunities to bring out innovations and it's more towards targeting the solving the local problems, and then ensuring that there is a little bit of a sustainability problem, there are sustainability opportunities there. So when we engaged with Startup Commons, it's also to figure out what do we have in common? What do the major cities and the movers and the community builders have in common throughout Sarawak? And then sort of try to compare based on the experience of Startup Commons themselves, having, being an outsider, being not from Sarawak, not local Sarawakian, probably will bring a different perspective. Then if you throw in the fact that we are indeed government agencies, so we look at things quite differently. Some of our processes and procedures and also the outcome and objectives are also quite different, or maybe different from the expectation of the local communities. And therefore, I think one of the objectives was also to see how we can sort of translate the objective of the state to the local communities. So that's where the hope comes in. I think the biggest discovery at the end of the day was we're actually the same. We have the same thought process. We have the same objective. A lot of the communities are building the communities, again, for the sake of sustainability, for the sake of economic growth, for the sake of innovation and problem solving for the communities itself. It's just hyper localized. And what I would then expect is that we want to see how we can provide a more holistic approach to coordinate the different activities that would spark up the development of each of the community builders and the communities that they are building, so that there is how to say a measurable growth that happens throughout Sarawak, and it's not necessarily equal, but it's fair.
Yes, exactly. That was also the true validation from our side when we were there. Like, while there are many actors with a lot of energy to create many things to support startups and basically looking after their needs and provide different services, at the end of the day, it's really important to I would say, to align what's happening at grassroots level with the big objectives and coming from governmental agencies or similar parties, and basically what is the kind of action that has to be taken towards aligning. And in that sense, I think that the journey itself or the tour itself there, it was really healthy exercise, because I'm not sure if it was for first time, but definitely there was a great participation coming from the different digital innovation hubs, and opening a lot of conversations with the government. So in those conversations, what was I would say, what were the main demands coming from the digital innovation hubs?
Yeah, so a lot of the demands, of course, I think it's not uncommon, not unique to us. When we talk about startups specifically, right? Our digital innovation hubs across Sarawak, and when I say our, I refer to the ecosystems, the innovation hubs. A lot of them run a lot of ideation type programs, boot camps, and then from there they look into seeing how to develop the idea and then form that into an actual startup, getting them registered through the legal process and such and such. A lot of the in the beginning, a lot of the challenges are getting sort of funding to get the startups from basically point zero to at least somewhere that they can begin with. A lot of the challenges comes from the fact that some startups come in with zero backing. A lot of the startups actually comes with zero backing, zero money from the bank account, but 100% belief and dedication to their idea. And I feel like a lot of the times when we have a conversation with the hub operators, the community leaders, in the beginning, they were seeking how do we get some sort of a fund? How do we get the startups access to funding opportunities? Again, I don't think it's a unique problem that we face. And then there's also the lack of talent, access to talent back then. So if we were to talk about tech startups specifically, we have yet to basically produce a lot of talents who are tech savvy, in a sense that they are able to program or do end-to-end or full stack programming, or graphics designer who are at the level that is internationally recognized, or can produce quality work that is, on par with what is internationally sort of assessed or something along that line. So yeah, it's access to funding, talent. So in terms of the ideas, it's a lot. If I welcome everybody here to have a conversation with any of the startups we have here, a lot of the ideas are very, very good ideas. It's just a matter of really refining it and sort of tailoring it to either hyper-localized solutions or something that is expandable, something that is scalable beyond the borders of their current operation. So yeah, those are, I think, the challenges that I basically observed within the ecosystem.
Sorry. So then that brought the clarity from your perspective to basically okay, we are having digital innovation hubs demanding specific things for the startups. So what is our role in this game? So then it was clear for you that very soon the role of the SDEC would be more around matchmaking and facilitating the matchmaking between different ecosystem items, right?
Yeah, correct. So then I think from there on, the thought process became, should SDEC become the solution provider, or should we be the facilitator that builds bridges so that the startups can actually have access to the services that they need? Then that word came into play, services, because when we look at what do they need? If they say funding, it's not really funding that they need. It's more like access to funding. So we created services that enables say fundraising or access to investors, or networking event for say high wealth individual, or even some sort of a government policies intervention that allows more transactions and investments to happen for startups. So that's basically the role of SDEC. And when we put the thought process there, it became a lot more clear. And then the roles are, I think, more well defined, and we can put in more resources that goes into the ecosystem.
Yeah. So then that brought also at the same time with that clarity around the role of facilitating connections and resources, etc. So I would say that brought at the same time the question around, okay, what kind of architecture we need to implement at the state level to be able to manage that volume of connections, volume of data, volume of information, coming from different parties, coming from different actors using different terminology, different language. So I guess that you need something else than a spreadsheet, right?
Yeah, of course. And this is, I think, where both you and also Valto, the input, the advisors, and also the observations that you make throughout the years, because we met back in 2018, 2019, right? And a lot of the conversations happen and revolve around services within the ecosystem. Who are the actors? Who are the ones providing the services into the ecosystem? And how do we really visualize that into a model? And then I think that's where the architecture comes in. And honestly, because I feel a bit lucky, I come in with a background of IT, a bit of information management. So I can think in terms of the model when you say architecture of a system, architecture of the ecosystem itself, then you can sort of figure out what are the frameworks in, what are the parameters in, what are the variables and stuff. So when we met, we basically spoke the same language, and we understand based on our observation, based on the tours that we did. We've spoken with a lot of the actors, a lot of the local community leaders, some government agencies, our hub operators. We were able to sort of fit in some sort of, or put together the architecture of the ecosystem. I think you can explain a lot better. What I have in, I think it's a lot of the jumbling up from this side, and then you and Walter basically put them into that structure that really helped.
Yeah. We will come back later to the digital aspect, but I think that it is really important that establishing that kind of communication between SDEC and the different actors on a periodical basis. So basically that helped a lot to bring more clarity about the role and the kind of solutions to put in place to serve the different ecosystem actors. I remember, and please correct me if I am wrong, that one of the first action you took after the tour there in Sarawak was to establish and periodically execute a kind of ecosystem forum, right? So that concept came from us, but could you elaborate a little bit more from your side, just to bring more understanding to the audience about what is this ecosystem forum is and how it works?
Of course, for the forum itself, yes, the idea, the conceptualization of the idea basically come from you. But let me defer this question to my colleague Elizabeth here.
Yes.
Hi. So the ecosystem forum that we have hosted, and we're going to host one in the next coming up month. We do it among our ecosystem partners, our digital innovation hubs. So a lot of it, I feel like this forum, it's not only a platform for us to get to know more about the problems and the issues and maybe the key challenges that each of these hubs encounter with the community, but also it's for each of the other hub partners to get to know more about each other. So sometimes it's like, this city is facing this issue, and then it's similar to another city, so they can then work together and also be like, I have this solution that probably would work for you, and maybe you could try it out. So it's a lot of like it's also, the forum would also be we aim to build that strengthen that relationship among all our hub partners so that they don't have to feel like hesitant, or they don't have to feel like, oh, I cannot approach another hub partner. They always have to go through us. No, that's not the aim of it. The forum is to just build up that relationship so everybody has an open and they're not scared or shy to share about their issues. They're coming together to create a mutual solution for any community challenges or issues.
Yes, exactly, and also the realization that while at the same time it's a great opportunity to capture information coming from different actors, it's also the moment to start building consensus or even standards at ecosystem level by having this kind of conversations, and then start also enabling real collaboration between different actors, right?
Yeah, exactly. Of course, being geographically dispersed as well. So that's one of the key challenges that we face in Sarawak. But then again, I don't think it's also unique to us. A lot of the ecosystem builders also has a problem or challenge of getting people in the same space together. When COVID basically happened, we did the forum online. It was a lot more, I would say, accessible, but then the human interaction becomes less. We understand the problem. We know what the problem is, but we're not necessarily able to understand where the problem is coming from or why the problem is happening. We might not be able to identify some of the opportunities that may present itself if we were to be present. And then especially if an outsider comes in and observe how our small little ecosystem contributes and play a role in the bigger ones, right? Say for instance, like Elizabeth, like Ellie mentioned, an issue might arise in one of the hubs, and then that is basically non-issue in another hub. So when they exchange this kind of knowledge and information, we hope to be able to bring everybody to sort of the same baseline standard and start developing from there. By creating, I think, that base, that very strong base and foundation through the interaction and collaboration between our hub operators, and not necessarily just our hub operators, but also other other, say, digital or even the, the traditional, the more conventional infrastructure that is available that may address SMEs rather than startups. We can look into this cross pollination of ideas, cross pollination of solutions that may benefit just about everybody. So that's the whole idea of the ecosystem forum itself. Of course, the main target is our the digital innovation hubs that is overseen by SDEC, but also inviting other innovation infrastructure. For instance, your private co-working spaces or privately run accelerator or bootcamp programs and such. So we welcome a lot of these conversations between the different, say, operators, or actors.
Yes. Let's make a small break in the conversation just to take some questions from the audience. For example, we have from Jose Checo. Basically, he's asking have you seen a connection between existing small and micro business to provide the growth, or just new ventures?
Connection between existing small and micro businesses to provide growth. Yes. So under if I were to speak specifically of the different solutions solutions and initiatives that SDEC offers, together with some of the ministries, we work together. We look into the digitization of the small and micro businesses, be it from the perspective of establishing their online growth through some of our programs. There is SME Digitize, and also some other ministries, like, for instance, the Sarawak Tourism Board Online Ecosystem Fund, that helps to establish an online presence for the local tourism industry and tour operators. There is also a few grants that allows access to purchase or for the purchase of hardware or digital hardwares that the small and micro businesses can actually implement in their business so that they can start adopting digital solutions. So it's not necessarily just for new ventures. We mix and match these solutions together. Again, it caters to the different target market, but at the end of the day, when we look at it, it's for the Sarawak digital ecosystem itself.
All right. And also, Jose Checo is asking that why a government-owned company is the path for you.
I guess I may not be the best person to answer from the perspective of the government-owned company. Basically, if you look at it from the perspective of me being a worker there, it's just one of the staff there. But then this is something that I'm also passionate about. A little bit of an anecdote, if I may, Oscar. Before joining the government agency that runs or catalyzes the innovation ecosystem in Sarawak, I also ran my own startup, and I think Elizabeth was actually my say co-working office manager back then, right?
Oh,
one of the
yes.
So that's the role has been reversed now somewhat. So I ran my own startup back then. It was a STEM education startup, and then I started noticing that, look, the government could actually do this and this and this. There's a lot of interventions in terms of, say, policies, in terms of guides, guidelines, and those kind of things that at government level would be able to ease and provide for startups, that so that the startups themselves can actually focus on the development of the product or of the service, rather than having to navigate the whole legal aspects of things or accounting aspects of things. Of course, these are necessary, but by just because it's necessary doesn't mean that it has to be hard, if you get what I mean. So I think having sat in the seat of a founder, I would be able to sort of use that experience and then see if I am indeed in a government-owned company that has somewhat of an influence in making the changes at government level, then it's basically not a brainer for me to be here. So yeah.
Yeah, I also have to say that the path to become the operator or the orchestrator, so it also depends on each ecosystem, how each ecosystem is structured, and if there is a lot of influence coming from the public sector, or if the private sector is the one that taking the lead, and then the way to structure that really varies. It can be public-private partnership type of entity, it can be association, it can be NGO, it can be a foundation, it can be different options are out there. So the most important thing, I think, is to identify the strengths of each ecosystem, to identify how are the competencies around ecosystem development are distributed, and then try to basically to attract people and organizations that can contribute to that journey towards creating more coordination and moderating the startup ecosystem. All right. We also have one question on the chat. So how have you identified, tested, and leveraged your unique local ecosystem strengths? For example, the proximity to natural resources, the tourism, etc.
Got it. When we first started, we basically let's look at it from the perspective of having established the Digital Innovation Hub. So these are innovation infrastructure, physical infrastructure that is basically a co-working space, but we do run programs there as well through our partners and stuff. We basically let it run its course naturally. We didn't say that, okay, this particular innovation hub is tech oriented, that innovation hub is tourism oriented, or this innovation hub is, say, health oriented or government oriented or something like that. We basically let it run its course because we are under the expectation or in hopes that the local operators would understand the communities better. Then we realized that the digital innovation hubs in the north, in the extreme north, and also in the extreme south, they have a tendency to be a little bit more tech oriented. I think it has to do with the industries in these different locations. There is also in the central region, it's more towards e-commerce. Also, I think partially because it's also the transportation hub into Sarawak as well. And then how do we, so in terms of identification of the strength of each of the local ecosystem, the smaller ecosystems, we basically let the hubs operators and the community builders run its course, and then let the communities tell our hub operators that, so that they can also relay the information back to us. Dictating is probably the last, or even gatekeeping is probably the last thing on our mind, because what we intend to do is to enable rather than to tell you rather than to tell people what needs to be done. Then from there, I think some of the success stories spoke for itself. We fell under the eyes of some of the ministries. The tourism ministries are taking interest in digitizing the tourism industries. The health industry is also looking into it. So it's more about letting it, naturally progress. It does take time. This is not something that happened in the past year. Has been in the works for the past, maybe since 2017, 2018 and stuff like that. So yeah. And then when we speak to a lot of our startups also, even the SMEs, what works for Sarawak specifically is the word of mouth, because even though we are geographically dispersed, right? A lot of the times the ecosystem players and actors generally know each other through some sort of an event. We've met before, we were friends before. Some of them went to high schools in the past. Some of them met through business events. Some of them worked together before. So yeah, so I think that's one of the unique factor that we have. It might be the same to you, but I feel like it's one of the things that is particularly unique about Sarawak, because like even myself and Elizabeth, we basically were working together back then. She handles the Magic co-working space where I was a co-worker back then, and now we're part of the team that also develops the ecosystem. So yeah, even our friend, our head of department, basically my boss, our bosses, we were friends first before we became co-workers. So if you need to scale up, again, the strength are the word of mouth works here. And the local communities are very open and honest about the challenges that they face, and then channel those challenges back to the ecosystem, to our operators, and then through the ecosystem forum, voice that out. We had ran one town hall before. It was quite a bit of a challenge in terms of the events itself, but garnered a lot of interest, and we feel like it will be the next step for us from the ecosystem forum. So yeah, I hope that it's a bit of a long answer, a bit of a winding answer, but basically we let it run its course. We place the right resources at where it is necessary, and then we try to extract information from there and then communicate back to the rest of the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think it was clear enough. Anyway, we will have the recording, and anyone can come back to the topic again to get the full response. No problem with that. Okay, we left the conversation in 2019, and that year you also did all the way to Helsinki to attend SLAS, and you experienced the beautiful darkness that we have here in November. But I guess that it was also like a really great experience for you to get a lot of inspiration, not only from the event itself, which is amazing and is coming in 2-3 weeks, but also it was around the concept around ecosystem development and how you got more learnings, more experience coming from different delegations that attended the event. And then after Slash, then the COVID came, and all the beautiful plans went to the trash. I guess that from SDEC perspective, you also started to provide services to cover the most vital needs. I can imagine that. I'm wondering if the COVID experience made any impact on the plans you are now executing. I am referring here more to the digital side for obvious reasons due to COVID accelerated tech adoption in different ways. So what does your case do?
So like I said, the whole digital economy initiative or strategy was started off back in 2017, 2018. This was a couple of years before COVID. COVID came to us and landed in 2020, early 2020, sometime around there. I think at a lot of our local entrepreneurs and startups are basically working or operating with that sort of in the back of their mind, like everything has to be digitized. There was a lot of, from the government perspective, there's a lot of push to enable digitization. They are, I think, looking at one of the things that is that has been implemented is our own e-wallet, which is the SPay Global, and then getting a lot of the government agencies to take that up and using it as a platform to subscribe or pay bills and stuff like that. So basically, groundworks has been in the works, right? When COVID happened, basically everything was just accelerated. Of course, we had to take care of the whole emergency responses first. So once everything basically settles down, we are able to relax a little bit. Then a lot of the plans came back into the picture. And I think everything was basically just accelerated rather than, pivoted too much from my perspective, at least. Basically, a lot of our projects are, some of the projects or initiatives that we did say that, how do we enable access to this service or initiative that is based in one city to other cities across Sarawak, right? So having or being digitized is one of that solutions. And then it's just a matter of getting the right tools and getting the right resources to implement and enable these kind of solutions. So I think that's probably just one of my perspective on this.
Yes. And then I think that was sorry, Elizabeth, anything from your side like you wanted to add on top of?
Khairool has perfectly covered whatever that was on my mind as well.
All right. So then the creation of SDEC happened in 2021, right? So what
2020.
was 2020 in the middle of COVID? Sorry. So why that happened? So why was SDEC created? And basically, what was the agenda and the objectives to support the startup ecosystem in Sarawak?
Got it. That one, the formation of SDEC itself was more towards optimization of the state resources, I think. So their stand, the Sarawak Multimedia Authority stand as the policy maker for digital economy projects and initiatives across Sarawak. And then they needed an implementing agency, and that's where it comes into the picture. In terms of our own team, because we've been handling the projects under the innovation pillar, then our team basically just moved, or basically was just plugged and then played into SDEC itself. Unfortunately, that's not really that fun of a answer. I wish it was, but yeah, the only thing for me personally that was fun because was the formation of SDEC, or at least the offer for me to join SDEC came exactly on the date of my birthday. So yeah, I'll remember that always.
Yes, yes, it's really nice. Um, and and what is basically the current moment that now in the stack? So what are your main focus right now? What are you doing? Basically, I think that brings like a good understanding about what is the difference between when you started in or when SMA started in 2018 and now. So
Back then, I think we were basically grasping in the dark. We kind of know what we needed to do, but don't really know how to do it. Um, I think by now we basically know how to do it. It's just a matter of really doing it and then engaging with the right partners and getting the right resources to be placed in the right places and timings so that everything can run. I work in a process of, the process of my work is that I like everything to be automated to a certain extent, right? So that systems and processes can actually support the people that, orchestrate the whole thing. So what we are looking at right now are placing the mechanism and processes to link up the different services for the right beneficiaries. And then, so let me peel a little bit here, right? We talk about the target beneficiaries or target group for the different services. And a lot of the times when we talk to our startups, back then we try to categorize each of the startup. Okay, these persons or these peoples are developing technology and therefore they are a tech startup. Whereas another group of people are looking into solving a particular problem within the society. So they're probably a social entrepreneurs. Then there is also a group of people who are educators who look into intervention at education level at primary, secondary schools. There are people who look into fundings and basically look into trying to enable or make more investments and gain revenue from the investments. And we quickly found out that no particular group of people fit into a container, right? And it's probably a lesson learned. We should have learned this. We should have observed this a lot sooner. So what had happened instead was, rather than categorizing people, we started to allow them to take up some sort of attributes to themselves. For instance, I might be a tech startup because I develop my own technology, but my technology is going to be used in the education sector, and therefore I'm also a STEM educator. Then because I'm also a STEM educator and I contribute to the education, then I'm also a social entrepreneur. So I put on different hats, or my company does a lot of things. And then we started to sort of identify the different beneficiaries, and rather than categorizing, we then attribute. Then from those attribution, we then started to look into tailoring the different services that caters to the different attributes, be it a combination of more than one attribute or one particular attribute. So that's basically where we at. From the other side of things, because we want to be that connector, right? We want to be that facilitator. We look into the different services that is provided by the different partners within the ecosystem. So one ministry could be focused on investments. Another ministry could be focused on policies. Others might be focused on, a lot of other things. Research and product development, for instance, or innovation infrastructure, those kind of things. So we try to we then try to categorize these different services, and then look into how we can package it together so that they are able to be presented, subscribed by the different beneficiaries that they are intended for. And then at the same time, we look into the different ways to measure the different outcomes, and then look into how does it positively or negatively benefit the different beneficiaries. So basically, that's where we're at. A lot of the things are currently also in the works. We hope to be able to accelerate that as well. Once we have the framework ready, we'd be happy to just share it with just about everybody.
Yes, very good. And I also want to say that we are more than happy to contribute to that huge vision that Sarawak has towards what Khairool said about automating more processes and become more data-driven to eventually remove barriers for startups in the ecosystem. Maybe you or Elizabeth, you wanna speak a little bit about Serapi project because I think that is also relevant to the conversation.
Yeah, of course. So Serapi project, Serapi is one of the mountain here in Sarawak, basically. So that's where basically the name came from. But it is also an acronym for the Sarawak Entrepreneurs Registry, SER, and then API. So it's an application programming interface. So if you're in the tech industry, this is quite common for you. The idea is to create a platform that is accessible by the startups themselves, by the actors, and other partners of the ecosystem, as well as the government, so that they can actually look into the different and extract different data points or observations, again, being data-driven, that could be used or to influence some sort of a policy, to influence some sort of a new initiative that targets the whole state. Basically, it's just that. If you look at it, from the layman's or from the tech perspective, it's basically a registry or database of startups that contain things like tracking of their growth, the different metrics of growth, for instance, their job creation, revenue growth, market access or market presence, or technology development or such. So these are the different metrics that is captured in amount of investment. So that can be input by both the startups themselves and also by the investors. Then the whole database is like an interlocking of things, and then as and when it's required, we can then pull out summary of information and present that to the right parties. Again, when I say and I think the best part of this is the ownership of the data belongs to the startups themselves. So we're not encroaching on any sort of PDPA or any policies that is against the Data Protection Act. It's when we extract, these are major numbers, these are summary numbers, or high level statistical data. So yeah, we also try to capture KPIs for each of the individual startups through Serapi itself. But then for me specifically, or for Sarawak specifically, what we aim to do is to standardize, or not really standardize, to, what is the right word, Oscar?
Streamline?
Streamline, yes. Thanks, Ellie. To streamline the initiatives that happens within Sarawak itself, so that it doesn't overlap. And then look into reallocating our resources into gaps, areas that has gaps in the ecosystem. That's why when I go back to what I mentioned earlier, identifying the beneficiaries and identifying the services for the startups, and then gelling this together, and then having the sort of that middle ground where certain initiatives falls under what services for the beneficiaries. That would make sense if we have enough data pulled in, so that we then identify the different gaps. Then if you put in the another sort of axis of the development of the startups, be it from ideation to prototyping to actual growth, you can actually see a whole map of services, beneficiaries, and also the programs that's happening throughout Sarawak. And I hope that using this and with a partnership with Oscar and Balto through Digioli, we will be able to realize this project. Very big, I feel like, but yeah, we'll see how it goes.
We are just in the first step, so but it's really great, the kind of commitment that coming from the side, and also the high ambition level that they have towards basically bring that vision to reality. And I think that we are all on the time now, but I don't want to leave the conversation without asking about the future, basically. So I think that a lot of around digital will be in your agenda in the coming years. But I'm also curious about in that digitalization process that you are, I would say, initiating right now. So how do you envision also the relationship with other ecosystems through digital means?
Can I defer this to also again to Elizabeth and see? I'll add on after this.
Sorry, can I get the question again?
Yeah, so I'm
yeah,
no problem. So I was asking that, I was saying that it's clear your vision and commitment towards digitalizing the startup ecosystem in Sarawak, and basically it is the starting point, and right now, and I guess that the digital agenda will be heavier along the way. My question is also, how do you see the use of digital when you are trying to also to relate with other ecosystems?
Ooh, Khairool, I'm gonna need your help here, man.
That was tough. That was the last one.
That was a tough one.
No problem. I'll jump in. So from the perspective of the state, again, as I mentioned, if you Google the Sarawak Digital Economy Strategy, that happens, it's a 5-year roadmap from 2018 to 2022. And this is 2022 coming to an end already. So what's going to happen next? Due to COVID, also there is an intervention plan called the Post-COVID Development Strategy, PCDS. You can Google that as well. It's also public information. Within that outlines some of the key objectives, and then innovation is identified as one of the strong enabler that looks into the whole development of the digital economy in Sarawak itself. We will still continue to support Sarawak in ways and means, and put all of our resources in that. But beyond that, the interaction with other ecosystem, I think what we aspire, and I think I echo Oscar on this. I hope I don't take the words out of your mouth, Oscar. Is that from our perspective, we build portions of the ecosystem operating system, or ecosystem OS, let's call it that. We have Serapi, and we want to be able to extend the services that is available in Serapi, or some of the framework that is available in Serapi. API is part of its name, so we hope to be able to open that up, and then let other ecosystems to also plug and play and develop and build on top of it, so that it is tailored to their own ecosystem, and then feedback into the big ecosystem itself, so that we will still be able to access some of the data and look into the differences that is happening, say, in the Philippines, in Brunei, in Kalimantan, in Jakarta, that is in the Southeast Asia. We want to look into what's happening in India. We want to look at what's happening in say, Spain, and also Finland and Istanbul. We've been there. So I think one of my very big aspiration is that we would be able to look into the development of that internetwork of ecosystem, and then learn and exchange from each other. I think that's also part of the aspiration of the state as well. We do not want to work in a bubble. We hope that we will be able to leverage on the different partnerships that we may be able to foster, and then bring, through the ecosystem relationship, bring our own startups beyond Sarawak, beyond Malaysia, and also invite startups that is not from Malaysia or not from Sarawak to be part of the Sarawak digital ecosystem. So I think that's part of my aspiration.
Yes, exactly, and that's basically the kind of joint vision when basically looking at also at digital at global level is to create that kind of I would say ecosystem forum globally, so that all together can also work more on creating specific standard for data sharing between ecosystems. So right now everything is happening very manually. There are multiple use cases that requires the connection with other ecosystems, like how to help startups to expand beyond the borders, or how to get access to a more experienced pool of mentors because my ecosystem, for example, is in a very early stage, or how to attract more international investors and so forth. So there are multiple use cases around that, but eventually it's all about sharing. It's all about learning from others. It's all around getting access that maybe you don't find in your local setup, and they are out there, and basically from your perspective of facilitator for the ecosystem, how to make that easier for any startup and any entrepreneur. So that's the kind of journey that we are preparing, and we are more than happy that first of all that Sarawak State has taken the leadership globally on this track, on the digital track, and we feel really honored to be part of this. And now the invitation is for anyone to basically to join this global movement and accelerate developments. So we are over time. So I also want to take some questions if we have, and then we can conclude. All right. So so basically, I'm checking here in the chat. Like there is one question coming from Arjan saying like, how do you measure success of startup ecosystem development? What are specific KPIs and over which timelines?
Got it.
That's the common question, right?
Yeah, it is a common question. What is the KPI? Because you still have your objectives, but how do you measure the objectives, whether you have met the objectives or not? The thing about ecosystem is I feel like it has to come in organically. You can do a lot of intervention. I think you can do a lot of poking and prodding around, and then see if this works, then let's push it further. If this doesn't work, we'll take away our resources and then put it into something that works. Then again, what is the KPI? I think for me, as an ecosystem developer mindset, with the mindset of an ecosystem developer, the KPI that I put to myself is, how do I keep people engaged? How do I keep people interested? How do I keep people motivated? And how do I keep people informed? I feel like, so these are the KPIs that I put in. It's not necessarily a specific KPI, but it's more of a how do you then tailor your own KPI that fits into your own ecosystem, because the ones that we have in Sarawak might work for us. I can say that in order for us to measure our ecosystem, because this is also part of the PCDS and it's already stated there, we have to produce 1,000 or I think 5,500 or was it 1,000 high-tech startups. So that's a very hard KPI in terms of the number itself. But what does a high-tech startup mean, right? So it's not necessarily something that is specific. I guess lucky/unlucky for me, some of the KPIs is already stated for SDEC, is already stated for the Sarawak digital ecosystem. It doesn't mean that we cannot stray away from it. It's just that it's basically our guiding light or our goalpost at the end. But for me to answer that question, Arjun, how do you measure the success of a startup ecosystem development? Start with the questions of, how do you keep people engaged? How do we keep people interested? How do we keep people informed? So with that, you can probably start with the answers, you can probably start identifying the KPIs that you could look into achieving, and really tailor that KPI specific to the development of your own startup ecosystem. And I hope that answers it.
Anything to add from your side, Ellie?
No.
No.
All good from me.
All good from you. Okay. So yeah, I also want to add that the definition of success is I would say it should vary depending on the maturity level also of the startup ecosystem. It's not the same to define success for early stage startup ecosystem than one that is more mature, that are looking more at, for example, creating more scale ups and so forth. So that also has to be taken into account, basically to also manage expectations. So for all the stakeholders, and to create also good energy towards moving forward on the same direction. But yeah, I think that with that question, I think that we don't have more. We can conclude here. I think
there's one more, Oscar, just after it, Alexander John.
All right. Yes. I think I skipped it. Sorry. Thanks for that, Khairool. So how does ecosystem orchestrators such as SDEC resolve issues in policy where startups have barriers to scale, for example, and among conflicting actors, stakeholders, if any? So, well, I think I think Khairool has basically gone through that, but in my view, it is also related to that mechanisms that you are able to establish to have that kind of conversation and that moderating role to basically to identify gaps, to identify issues, to identify overlappings, and then as a moderator and also as the ecosystem flag role. So basically your responsibility is to communicate that those things are happening, and also solutions are required to fix those things. So a lot around ecosystem forum and establishing that mechanisms, I think is key to basically to address or to cope with those challenges. Anything to add from your side, Khairool?
Yeah, like you mentioned, it's managing expectation, coordinating with the different ecosystem actors, and basically falling back to facts. If we could somehow have everybody to contribute to one body of knowledge, this phrase, I love to use this phrase, contributing to the single source of truth, then everybody can refer to that and look into how they can then also contribute to that whole body of truth. And it doesn't really matter how. It could be done manually, it could be done verbally, it could be done ideally systematically, right? So that it's recorded and can be referred to. But at the end of the day, if all the actors are looking into the benefits of the ecosystem itself, then issues should not be, a lot of issues can be resolved quickly. I think for us, specifically for SDEC, a lot of the policies within Sarawak itself is quite a challenge for startups. And we recognize that. And we recognize the need to change some of the policies. But while we do have an influence somewhat, but it does take a lot of time. And therefore, what we're building right now is a whole, like I said, a whole single source of truth, so that this truth can also be presented statistically and quantitatively to the policymakers, so that they can look into it and say that, well, this is what the data says, and therefore our policy needs to also change. So I think that's the drive, and that's basically what keeps me where I am right now.
And it's like a really amazing way to finalize the webinar, because it will also open a new topic that we are thinking about. And you said in that statement, contributing to the single source of truth. I think it's like a really key topic also, and we are also looking at organizing something around that. But let's stop here. I really want to thank you both, Ellie and Khairool, your participation. I know it's quite late there in Sarawak. I really appreciate your time and how you went through all my questions as a policeman. And basically, we are looking forward to continue the conversation with SDEC and contributing to that amazing vision that they have. That's all from our side.
Thank you for joining us also.
Yeah, any final thoughts or comments from your side, Elizabeth or Khairool?
Ellie, maybe you can wrap up.
Well, this is like my first webinar that I am actively participating in. Thank you so much, Oscar and Valto, for giving us this platform to share more about the Sarawak ecosystem, learning more about everybody's experiences across the globe as well. I'm looking at the chat like, wow, yeah, very, very eye-opening, very enlightening. Looking forward to more sessions. Yeah.
Thank you, Ellie.
Yeah, same here, same here. I'm gonna put my LinkedIn in the chat, and then we hope to be able to connect with just about everybody here, and then see if we can be part of this whole ecosystem development movement globally.
Yes, thanks, Khairool. Thank you, everyone. From our side, I think that we have really enjoyed this conversation today with Khairool and Ellie. We are preparing more actions. We don't have specific dates yet because, as usual, the end of the year is quite tight for everyone. But definitely, we are having more thoughts and suggestions for future webinars. Thanks everyone for attending. Thank you for participating, for being so active, and see you soon. Bye.